Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of Discourse in Magic. 20. Whoosh. See, 20 is a really exciting number because I've been so far counting episodes on my fingers and my toes, and I'm out now. So I need to start counting episodes on Tyler's fingers or toes, or if you guys at home have any extra appendages, please feel free to send them our way because we love counting episodes on appendages. So without further ado, I want to dive right into this episode 20, with Bobby Motta. Bobby is an incredible mentalist, and if you know anything about mentalism, you've probably heard his name. He has released a ton of different incredible mentalism products, and he's a really bright guy, and if you go see his show, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Before the episode, I just want to give a big thank you to Bobby because he has supplied us with a copy of Blackmail. Blackmail is one of the tricks that he has released, and it's almost a tool more than a trick, one that I use all the time, and I think that it's incredible. So it's for our contest, which is going on this month, and it's very easy to win. All you have to do is send us anything on Twitter, either something that you like, something that you don't like, something you want to see more of, something you want to see less of, anything you like, to @MagicDiscourse, and you will be submitted to possibly win a copy of Blackmail. It is an absolutely incredible tool, and it will help us to know what it is that you like or don't like about what it is that we're doing. And of course, we want to help you by giving you free things. So there it is. There's the contest for right now. And a big thank you to Bobby. And without further ado, here it is, episode 20 of Discourse in Magic with Bobby, talking all about the ins and outs of mentalism. Here it is.
Hello, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Tyler.
My name is Jonah.
It is a fine spring day here in Toronto. It's pretty hot outside. I have terrible allergies. My eyes are on fire. But good news, we're here with Bobby Motta.
What's up, guys?
Before we get into all that, why don't we start with who you are and how you got into Magic?
Okay. So I'm Bobby, and I got into Magic late in the game. Really late in the game, as opposed to everyone I know that started off when they were really young. I actually got into it heavily when I was 30.
Wow.
That was 14 years ago. So yeah, basically I was in Vegas. I walked into a magic shop and I spent all my money. I was with my wife. It was on our 1 year anniversary, and that was it. I got the bug real bad, and that was it. I just every day. I had a business I just sold, so I was at home kind of depressed. Cracked open the cards, watched the Illusionist videos, read all the books, Erdnase and all that kind of stuff, and it was just my outlet. It was kind of like a little saving grace for me at the time because I was going through some stuff. But I was exposed to magic early on when I was around 6 with my uncle, and this is the one that I talk about most when people ask if it's a different, he's the first guy. The first magic trick I ever saw was with my uncle. He had a false tooth, and he pulled it out, and he pulled it back with his tongue, and he used a chiclet, like a white little gum, and pretended that was his tooth, put it in his pocket, and when I looked back in his face, his tooth was back. So I was trying to pull my tooth out and stuff, and that was amazing. So he taught me a couple of things. He exposed me to the thumb tip, or am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, whatever.
He exposed me to a prop. Too late. Anyways, and showed me a few things with it, and so I played around with it as like anyone else, with the magic kits and that kind of stuff. But really, my big exposure was later in the game.
And then how did you do the switch from Magic to mentalism, or was it sort of...
It was over time, so it was close up for me at first. Within the first year, I released my first product, something called Voodoo Dust, and that did fairly well, and that was in the first year of actually doing magic, and I was doing close up. I was working through a couple of planners, and I had a couple of restaurants. I was just doing close up all the time, and then I did one parlor show, and it was for a friend of mine, and I loved being in front of a larger audience, so that kind of opened the door for stage stuff, and it was comedy magic first. The first thing I did was comedy magic, and It actually did pretty good. It worked out well. That was kind of funny. Not the funniest, but kind of funny.
But you sort of had that magic to
Yeah.
fall back on because you weren't a comedian. And
I basically stole all of Bill Malone's material, and you know all the guys that I know. I was like a thief, like everyone else that starts. And then I started buying the big props, so I got into the illusions. So I had like 4 or 5 big illusions stored away in a place, and I had 7 doves. If you look at my backyard, that big thing you see right there, that's a dove coop, right? So I had 7 doves in there, and I did a whole dove act. And it wasn't the greatest dove act. I produced a dead dove once.
Oh no!
Oh my goodness!
It was a big bank event, and the CEO spoke for too long, and I'm sitting on the side with all my doves on, and I'm like, oh my god, this is not good. So my last dove, when I produced it, he fell off, and that's when I stopped doing the dove act. However, the reason why mentalism took a big role was because everything I did in magic and illusion, and it seemed like I was demonstrating something, like an amazing feat. Like it felt like I was showing off really on stage, but all the pieces that were mentalism felt like I was interacting. It was more like you were exploring together.
Yeah.
It felt more real. It wasn't like a puzzle for anyone.
it's also very like personal, you know, where you can feel that.
I was able to, bring stories out into it, and it really, really gripped the audience. I was really good at that. And I was always being praised at how that one particular routine where you read my mind, or the book thing, and blah, blah, blah. So then I decided, you know what? I can travel with a small case, get paid the same, if not more, become more exclusive, because there isn't as many mentalists. Well, now there is, but at the time there wasn't as many mentalists. So I kind of made the switch and branded myself as a mentalist, and that was it. And it's been perfect for me. It's been fitting, and I mean, I still do magic when I do close up. I still have a deck of cards in my pocket, but you can sell anything. Like any magic or any illusion can be sold as a mentalism effect too.
It's just a little bit of a twist.
It's a twist. It's the way you're selling it, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest defining feature? Where does the divide happen for you? Like from magic to mentalism, if they're so similar.
The patter.
Just the patter?
I mean, for me, it was the patter. Yeah. Because with magic and illusions, there's patter, but then there's a moment where you're doing the display. You're going through the whole presentation, and it becomes, sometimes there's music involved, and where I find that the patter, the back and forth patter, people actually listen to me when I'm on stage.
Because it's very, like, present. The other thing about mentalism is because it's all semi-real, it's very easy to draw on real experiences. Like, for a magician trying to frame one of their own effects, they need to come up with something that maybe doesn't relate. So you end up seeing magicians telling stories that don't make sense. They go, like, once there was a magician who did this, and then they're doing a trick through telling a story.
Right.
It doesn't really make any sense. Or they relate to something out in the world that, I mean, doesn't really relate to what's happening. With
You're
mentalism,
just sitting and watching a presentation when you're watching a magic trick, whereas with mentalism, you're sort of having a conversation almost.
Yeah, and they can relate to something that you actually might have experienced. I know in your show you relate, like, when you think of a song and it comes on the radio, or when you think of someone and you get a phone call, right? So that's the sort of thing where people aren't going, tell me the story, magic man.
Right.
Instead they're going like, yes, I've of course had that experience. And then when you see something that, like, really relates,
you can actually have a conversation with the entire audience with mentalism. There's certain things where you can actually, they will relate to you. It's real. It's life. And then, and the beautiful part about that is that now you can fish them in. You can, really bring them in, and they relate. They're like, oh, this is a normal human being. I understand because I that happened to me. Let's see where this goes. Where it no longer becomes a demonstration. It becomes an exploration. It's like a conversation you're having with them, and they're fully engulfed and they're connected with you. That's basically what it is. You have a connection with the audience. I think you have a deeper connection with the audience than you would with, like, a magic show as a presentation, as I said. I started my first head game show with, I would say, I'm not an illusionist, I'm not a magician. Illusionists and magicians demonstrate amazing feats. Mentalists, we explore. So for the next little while, it's not going to be a demonstration, it's going to be an exploration, and it starts with everyone doing this. And I would get right into it, right? And now all of a sudden, everyone's like, ooh, where is this going? It's no longer, it's now something they connect with. They're in tune, they're connected with you.
Yeah, it's sort of getting them to go internal and sort of self-reflect, but that brings them into your effect, right? Like you're shaping the effect to be personal for everybody,
right?
At the same time, as opposed to sort of like the one person on stage, and you're all sort of seeing vicariously through them. They're seeing through themselves, which I think is pretty interesting.
Right.
So one of the things that you mentioned is that audience members are more engulfed and they're more like, involved. And we just had, I guess when this airs, it will have been months ago, but we're about to release a recording session that we did with Ben Train, and it was all about ethics in Magic. And he's struggling right now to find a spot where he's not lying to the audience.
Right.
So I know that it's very common for mentalists to sort of open with a disclaimer, so at the end maybe people aren't worried that they are going to read their mind or anything like that. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you use a disclaimer? Do you care? Is it
so? Our communities. There's people that are in our community that become so. They become very deep involved in what's right and what's wrong. My opinion, whatever works. If you have
whatever gets the
whatever works. Listen. You're coming to see a show. You're under the umbrella of Magic. Guess what? This is the one industry that you are paying for the best liar. Really and truly. So,
right.
At the beginning of my show, I have a disclaimer, but this disclaimer, I just do it because it's part of my patter. I say, right now, if you come to my show, do you know what a mentalist does? A mentalist creates the illusion of mind reading.
Right.
That's my disclaimer. Guess what? It's forgotten. No one ever goes back to that. But for me, it gives me free will to do whatever I want. Now, if there is someone in the audience that, that is questioning me, or that, they can't turn around and say, I'm religious and you lied and I'm against that. I've already cleared that. That's, my conscience is cleared. I'm good to go. But I don't have to do that, and it doesn't make a difference to me. As long as you are left smiling, you're happy, and you're enjoying it, and at the end of it, you're like, wow, that was amazing. What I just disconnected with the outside world for that period of time, and I was in this world, and that's what my goal is, to make sure that I bring you into this little movie. I give you emotional arcs, and at the end of it, you're left completely free of perception, and maybe your mind is expanded a little bit. And that's that. For me, that's the most important thing.
Wow. So when someone leaves, do you want them to think something different about the impossible, in terms of would you actually want them to think that mind reading or sort of things or that sort of thing is real?
That is such a good question. And the reason why I love that question is because I struggled with that, because what do I want? Because everyone always asks, Ken Weber is a friend of mine. He wrote an amazing book called The Maximum Entertainment.
Incredible book.
So Ken said, what do you want the audience to walk away with it? And I struggled with that, is because do I want them to be fooled? Do I want them to be everyone says, I want my audience, I want their brains to melt, and I want to kill them,
But I don't know that I want that.
Yeah.
So my theory now is I want them just to feel whatever emotion that comes up. I just want them to feel something. That's all. That's the most important thing. If they walk away not feeling anything, and that was great, but I can't wait to go see the game. That's not what I want. I want them to walk away and hit either emotionally, comically, something. I want something to shift in them, and whatever it is, that's that person's issue. They deal with that, or whatever, or it's their joy, or it's their. If it's a puzzle that they're sometimes people are like, I am so pissed right now, I can't figure this out. It's a puzzle for me. Perfect. Live
That's
with that
how
one.
you choose
Amazing.
to interpret it. Then
I'll have some people come up to me, say, can you do me a favor and let me know how my grandmother is doing? And I'm like,
so how do you
where
respond
is she?
to that?
She's been dead 10 years.
So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, what's your...
I don't ever respond to that. I'm like, I don't, the show's over. I make a comedy, I'm like, it's an extra $20, or whatever.
Yeah.
So why don't we take a picture and look into that? I don't do that kind of stuff.
So when let's say after the show, someone specifically was, I guess as long as they enjoyed the process, you're not worried. But let's say someone comes up particularly, having believed in it, they were particularly moved, and then they come up and they ask you either to tell them that sort of thing, and they're being very serious and very honest, and it's not the kind of thing.
If they say that you are the cause of this change in perception, not like they believed in mind readers and now they need a mind reader, it's like, wow, I didn't think mind reading was possible, but I saw your show and now I think I'm going to go to a psychic tomorrow.
Right.
What would your response be? How do you handle that sort of situation?
I think for me as a mentalist, I've kind of hit my end goal with this because I have the luxury of doing 4 shows a week. I'm going into my 5th season, so I have like hundreds of people seeing me on a weekly basis. I take pictures with them at the end of the show, so I get feedback. And the feedback that I've been getting is confirmation that what I've been doing is exactly what I want. And that is that when they come to me at the end of the show, they say, I know how you did it. And a lot of people say this. And the explanation they give me is exactly what I've been feeding them.
Exactly.
And it's nothing near the truth.
Right.
So they totally bought into whatever I was selling. And it was entertaining, and it was amazing, and it was a feat that's hard. No one can do it. So when they say, I know how you did that.
And they sort of explain like procedurally, but of course they're...
The explanation on their part is, I ask them, how do you think I did that? They say, well, I noticed you were looking at his eyes, and his eyes went to the left, and because I explain that part about neurolinguistics programming, but it's part of my pitch, like I sell it like that. Dual reality sold and received and bought. I'm done. I'm good. That's exactly
so when it's bought at the end, you say, checkmate. That's it.
Done. I
Game
did
over.
my job.
Let's take the
I'm
photo.
happy. Thank you. I shake their hand and I'm like, I'm so happy that you saw that. That's great. And
Right.
I leave it alone.
And if somebody comes with a message that wasn't what you thought, will you try to bump it or tweak it at the end or whatever you got?
I always try to walk away from it. You know what? It's and at the end of my show, I always say mystery is a beautiful thing. Right? It is a beautiful thing. Why mess with it? Right? So I just leave them hanging as much as I can. I even try to add to that hang a little bit more. Really, there's a story that Danny DeOrtiz was telling me, I think so, or Christian Engblom was telling me. It was at the lecture of the three of them. He was talking about Juan Tamariz, and he said that at the end of many of his tricks, he would just lean back in his chair, and for 5-10 minutes, he would go, yeah, and he could have named any card. He could have named, and he just keeps milking that moment to try to really let that mystery drag on. So I like that at the end of the show, you're sort of telling people enjoy this, this mystery is a fleeting thing you only got to experience right here in my show. So enjoy it, because that's the sort of thing that. Yes.
That's the sort of thing that we'll go through. So how does mentalism compare with science? I mean, a lot of the way that you speak with information, it's very scientific. They're big words, but they're scientific words. They're words that having to do with the body, having to do with the mind. And these sort of things help people in terms of convincers and convincing, because science is something that's very it's science.
Same way sort of some natural health specialists that aren't actually helping people. Some are helping people, but some that aren't actually helping people or use science to sort of confuse and sort of sell this pitch. So what would you how do you think mentalism is doing that, and what are your tips and tricks?
Oh, it's a hard question to answer, but I think so I'll give you a little story with what I think that the difference between science people and other people see mentalism first. So my real life experience is when I'm doing a show and it's a mentalism show and the audience sees it and they react, there is a difference in their reaction. Whereas I've done shows for Life Labs, 175 different scientists in the room. I come up towards the end of the effect where the punchline is coming, there's the prestige, and the reaction is usually built up, and I know it's first and then laughter, and then I don't get that with the science people. What happens with them is they have their legs crossed.
Just a pure puzzlement.
They have their legs crossed, they have their fingers on their chins, and their eyebrows are down, and they're looking, and they look at each other, and I get zero reaction. So first thing that happens to me is I'm offended. I'm like, how come they're not reacting? This was it. This was the moment was there. What happened? And then I realized I'm getting the best compliment in life.
Yeah, that is the reaction.
You've silenced these people.
They're trying to figure out what's happening and how this happened. They're trying to they're meshing science and And the thing is, like, I'm presenting something that's not reality. And the thing is...
And you're asking these people to come on board.
That same dual reality thing. But science is such an intricate tool. They break things down. It becomes a puzzle no matter what. And their thing, science is always trying to solve, certain equations. When you're given an equation that can't be solved,
yeah, an equation with so many missing pieces.
It's not science.
Yeah, and also they have this like, they get stuck in their head because everything they do is sort of, I find this when I perform for, I've never performed for a room full of scientists, but when I perform for like a room full of business people, they feel that they have all the solutions. So I find that magic is particularly amazing for them. Yeah, because they go ballistic because usually, a question is either a phone call away or a Google search away, and that's the sort of life they live. They all think that
they are doers.
Exactly. They're the shit. Like, yeah, ask me anything, I'll go figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that you use that, and also that you're very open to whatever the background and preconceived notions are of the audience before they come in.
Right.
Like, for me, I've always sort of positioned like, yeah, I understand that you're going to come in thinking this thing, but it's my job to, convince you of whatever it is that I'm doing. But I like the idea of saying, yeah, whatever. Who cares how they respond to it? Who cares what point A they started at emotionally and mentally and what point B? As long as those two are different, then I've done my job. I've given them an experience.
So here's the beautiful part between like mentalism and science is that it's such a beautiful mesh, but such a huge conflict. Where when it's together, it creates a boiling point, and that's where emotions come out. And it's beautiful for the show aspect of things because ultimately, yes, you're presenting something that's so closely related to science.
Yeah, it feels like it almost.
But there's a humongous conflict because it's just not. Mentalism is one thing. So like the old school mentalists would sell what they're doing as real. Uri Geller and all these guys. This, what I do is I possess a power. New school of mentalism is, okay, so we got
body
caught.
language.
We got caught. So now we're going to use a different outlet, psychology, right? And there's different magicians that use science in there. There's actual science magic. You hear about that kind of stuff, and science magic, mentalism. This is all stuff that kind of meshes together, but huge conflict. Where we're performers, we're here to entertain you. At the end of the day, even the science group, when they stand up and give me a standing ovation, and they come after the show, fantastic how you did that. We're completely puzzled by it, but they have, in one way, kind of omitted everything to do with science. They just enjoy the show. Right, they just enjoy the show, and they took away whatever they wanted from it. Same thing,
and that's fine. You can't force what feels to them as hokey science. You can't force that down the throat of scientists.
Right.
You might be able to wiggle that into the mind of someone who's very open and stuff like that, but you can't give that to scientists. One of the things that you mentioned was that mentalists went from this movement of like the real mentalism, which is, I'm reading your mind, contact the spirits, all this stuff, to this sort of we've been caught mentalism. But they both have this thing in common where, there's this framing of what I'm telling you is what's happening, right? So whether it's the I'm contacting the spirits, you're saying, I'm showing you this, and it is me contacting the spirits. And hopefully people leave the show thinking that. Same as with the psychology. You say, I'm doing this, and I'm doing it with psychology and body language. And hopefully they leave with that. With magic, you sort of want the competing beliefs of them saying, I know he just said it, but I know time travel isn't real. Right. Or I know he just said it, but I know that things can't transport from point A to point B. Can you shed a little bit of light on that difference, that framing between mentalism, where it's like, what you see is what you get, sort of, and for magic, there's this unspoken thing between a magician and a spectator where, I'm lying, but just sort of play along with my fantasy?
Well, I think it's very, very similar, though, because, even in mentalism, you can sell it whatever way you want, but then you hit certain points where just impossible things are happening, where even, because people aren't stupid, then you can't expect them to believe what you're saying is always real, because I may tell you that I'm gonna take a look and see certain signs and micro expressions, and based on that tell you exactly what number you're gonna think of. People look at that and think, how could that be? I mean, that's superhuman, right? So if you sell it like that, you need to make sure that you sell it. If you sell it like that, you need to make sure that you sell it properly and you don't insult the audience, because that's I think very, very similar. That's going to be in there, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we can tell them all about the baby
we'll comment
upstairs.
and be like, I'm sniffly, the table's creaky, there's a baby, there's dogs. We'll have a little
I'm naked,
preamble.
by the way. I'm naked. These guys told me that I have to do this interview with no clothes on.
All our guests.
Weird
Yeah,
reason.
video footage is coming out
It's
next week.
strange. I have no idea.
So you sort of feel that they're really similar. I mean, one sort of has this implication of truth and one doesn't, but you've sort of admitted that a lot of people aren't going to believe that implication anyways, and that sort of makes them similar.
Yeah, I mean, your storytelling. Your storytelling. Whether you're telling a story based on what you're doing and how you're doing it, or your storytelling based on an actual event that took place, it doesn't make a difference. It's still your presentation. It's still you saying something to grip the audience. So if I'm going to tell you about an old scientist that flew over blah blah blah, and there was time travel involved, I'm telling you a story. If it's interesting and there's funny moments in it, and you're listening to me,
Who cares if it's a fictional sounding story?
If I tell you
or
about certain facts, right?
For me.
Right.
Because I've always thought about magic as like, what am I trying to achieve? Why am I doing magic? Who is it for? Is it for me? Is it for the audience? But like, it's for everybody. It's sort of just like, I'm going to enjoy some of it.
Right.
They're going to enjoy their own little bit of it, hopefully.
I know that for me, if I tell the audience a certain story about a fact of psychology, it doesn't mean that what I'm doing is bad. So like, as long as I know that, I'm going to sell it properly. I don't want to look in someone's eyes. This is me. I don't want to look in someone's eyes and boldly lie to them, because it might, they might see that,
But
like,
you'll open the door and let them walk through it. So
yes, 100%.
Okay.
And whatever they get out of it, in whichever way they perceive it, that's them. And as long as my presentation is gripping and it's fun and I'm doing it, dramatically and it's theatrical, and that's it.
People are
that's
engaged.
all.
Yeah.
I'm here to make sure that you get your money's worth. Everything else doesn't matter. As long as you paid for a good show and you came in there, you laughed, you were amazed, you heard some interesting stuff, and you got lied to heavily about something that with a clean disclaimer,
Yeah.
and you got your mind blown at the end of it, that's it. Nothing else matters.
You gave them the whole experience, the whole package.
Nothing else matters. Yeah. That's what we're here to do, and don't let anybody else change that, because if you don't look at it that way, then you're not going to give the audience what they deserve.
Yeah.
Right. So before I go on stage, every time I do a show, I make sure in my mind, I always tell myself, love them, respect them, and give them their money's worth and 10 times more. I go out there with an appreciation for the fact that they're there watching me. So like I want to make sure that I give them everything I got. And one of the things I do is I always go out saying to myself, this is the last show you'll ever do in your life. I always do. Every show I do, every time I walk on that stage, this is the last show you'll ever do in your life. Ever do in your life. Yeah.
And that helps you, connect and sort of like that. If you have 24 hours to live, sort of thing.
Put everything out for them. If it's a freebie, if it's a pro bono, or if
a
they
risk
pay me
or
10K,
something,
whatever the case may be, I'm putting everything out there. I'm putting everything out there.
So we were speaking about sort of the long-term implications of magic, but specifically mentalism, in terms of belief and how you just want people to believe what they're going to believe, right?
Right.
And you compared it to a movie, saying you want to bring them into this world with emotional ups and downs, and then have them leave thinking, wow, what an experience. How do you feel about, let's say, like horror movies, and like when a child goes to see a horror movie, they walk away terrified of life? You know what I mean? So do you think that your mentalism has maybe had a negative impact on some people's lives in that sense? Or do you just try to steer away from any sort of
I think, you know, if you're writing your show, you have to write your show with some sort of intention. As like anything in life, you know, if you have a certain intention when you go into it, it usually unfolds with that intention in place, and it creates that emotion, especially in our industry where we're trying to write material that we're presenting to an audience. That whole presentation will be, your emotions will be involved in the presentation based on your intent, I think. So oftentimes when I get into it, what is my initial intent? What do I want the audience to feel? And that's really it, because when you're on stage and you have your intention and you write your show and you're very, very keen on making sure that your material that you write is written in certain, arcs. Gradual increase. And, you know, like, and you apply the certain things in life that we know, like the rule of 3 is huge. A lot of people don't know about that. Yeah. You know, so when I do my shows, I know that if I have a few effects, I'd like to have 6 effects in my shows. If not, you know, I like to have them in increments of 3. And in essence, what I'm doing is I want to take the audience on a roller coaster ride because it's as long as you're doing your job, you're controlling their breath. They're going to go up, they're going to hold their breath, they're going to release the breath when you want them to. And, you know, it's your job to make sure that you do that in a timely fashion, do that properly. And if you can do that, take them up, let them explode, release, come back down, start slow again, take them out, and you do this little ride, and you have that 3 steps implemented in there. It's something that humans are so connected with, you know. Then that connection with the audience is so deep and so strong that they're with you the whole way. At the end of my show, I always look and see if everyone's paying attention. If everyone, towards the end, they've been sitting there for 45 minutes to an hour, if everyone is completely connected and they're at the edge of their seats and they're smiling, they're looking, still waiting, and they're engaged fully, you've done your job right. You know, you've hit all those marks right. You've hit the arcs right, all the rule of 3 that you've applied, the words that you use, the timing. Because all those pauses are important, right? And when you pause and you're about to say something, if you take an extra beat, you might lose one person, right? And you got to remember, there's a wave in the audience too. When you lose one person, the second person will get that same, you know, feeling. You'll lose them, and it trickles. And before you know it, you're trying to fight to get them back, and you're off beat again. So all those things. It's why performing is not an easy thing. A lot of people think, I'll read the instructions and I'll do it.
And then I'll just go do it.
They flop all the time.
Yeah, you can learn any method you want, which is why we're doing this podcast, right? Exactly. Because there's so many people in our industry who are just learning and not performing.
So how do I do this? Like, I have a few guys that are pretty new in the industry that ask me to help them out. Zach Mirza being one of them, love him and everything. But you see these new guys come out and they struggle. They have all these defaults they go to, and ahs and weird body motions.
And you can tell, and it's very obvious and distracting. And
and they ask me, how do you come over that? There's one simple answer:
keep doing it.
Yeah. I did an audition for an acting role, a principal role, 2 weeks ago, and I had a coach with me. And being in front of a camera and doing an audition on camera, for me, I went right back to the beginning of my magic. I have defaults. I have these weird things I do with my face. I keep doing this with my lip. You know, I'm nervous, and I have this weird twitch I do with my eye, and it's like, and I told the coach, and I'm like, how do I lose this stuff? Like, how do I, and I'm like, I just asked the same question.
The same questions that I get.
That I get, and they're like, oh, you just got to do it often, and I'm like, you're right, I do. I should have known that.
I've learned this lesson already.
You know, you want to do anything really well, guess what? There is no magic answer. Just do it a lot. Sankey told me that. The first thing he's ever told me when I started messing around with him, he goes, you know what you need to do? Do more magic. Do as much as you can. Do free shows and do it as much as you can. Just don't stop doing magic. Do it all the time. And before you know it, you'll be amazing at what you do. So that's, you know, there's no other.
And that's the art.
Secret.
So you mentioned this idea of, you know, bringing the audience on these waves and with these pauses and stuff like that. And it's interesting because it sort of completely ignores any specific emotions or specific feelings or specific ideas. It's just the energy and the tension and the intention and the focus of the audience.
Right.
And it's interesting to just cut out everything else and sort of say, screw that. Like, that's all just like fringe worries. The main focus is their intent, their engagement, them being on the edge of their seats and having wide eyes and those, you know, that spacing where whatever the emotion that they're feeling is, it's that you're allowing to rise and fall
Right.
and move with you. So to me, that's a new idea to just think about the like attentive energy almost as the tool that you're playing with, instead of like
just being the guide, like we said, opening the door but not pushing them through it, just
Right.
sort of facilitating their emotional journey.
Right, but because you're not only the guide, you're also their chair. You're the roller coaster. They're sitting on you. Like you're their tool. So it's your job to do that, right? And it's not only knowing that that's what you're going to do and do it. It's actually going in intentionally and writing out the show like that. So like when I know that I'm in that moment of the show where they're down, I'm not going to move back and forth on stage and pace. I'm going to stay in one position. I'm going to go one notch lower. I'm going to deliver it a little bit more, and then you start the rise again. And that can't be done with just, I'm going to start to do it around here. That has to be written down. So like when I say this, I'm going to take 2 steps to the right, take my eyes from the center to this guy over here. This is all written, right? So if you see my show over and over again, it may seem like I'm just going, but you'll notice I do that one gaze and that one time during that one moment, always the same, right? There's a whole purpose behind doing that, right? And I think that's a lot of things that people tend not to see. And that goes through reading material on people that have done this before. I mean, like I keep referring back to Ken, but Ken's
it's a
book,
killer book. It's
right. It really,
best book on the
really goes
subject.
over, yeah, and same with Juan. He has an amazing book called the
Magic Way.
The 3 what's
5
it?
points in
Five points in
Magic.
magic.
5
Also
Points in Magic.
incredible book.
Incredible. And what's his name? The other guy.
Darwin Ortiz.
Strong
like Designing
Magic,
Miracles,
Magic,
Strong
Designing
Magic.
Miracles.
All incredible
All those
books.
books are like they talk about these things, and these are the things that are important, not just effects. Because at the end of the day, that doesn't even matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
They
matter.
all, so many effects are powerful. It's so awesome that you mentioned those books. We, with our newsletter subscription, I wrote a guide to a whole bunch of different magic books on theory that would help people. The Magic Way, Ken Weber's book, Darwin Ortiz's books. Every single thing that you're mentioning right now are exactly the ones in that little kit, because those are some of the only tools we have. We're down to like 5 or 10 or 15 books that a lot of magicians can. I mean, I know that there's other writing hidden, but that a lot of magicians can point to. Yet we all know what a ambitious card routine is.
Right.
We all know what a double lift is. You know,
Right.
But those aren't the tools that are going to make our magic to go from good to awesome. Those are the tools that are going to make us go from nothing to good.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's sort of like the idea of if you had 2 magicians going up on stage, and one magician might not fool the whole audience, but they can have a good time and enjoy it and go on this roller coaster. Versus a magician who just does the most impossible thing ever, like he makes you fly, and actually no, that would be impressive. But like they probably wouldn't have a good time. You know what I mean? Just watching someone.
So I think the best thing to look at is, number one, know that if the audience only walks away remembering the trick, that's a bad show. If the audience walks away with you in mind, that's an amazing show. But the best show is the strongest material presented in a way that the audience will be completely blown away, but they'll remember you at the end. Right? That's the strong point. You got to be you're the miracle. You're the part, right? They have to remember you. You have to shine over your material, right?
Yeah, you want it to be sort of like your effect is what is sort of emotionally jarring enough, or like what opens up there has the biggest impact on them.
Right.
But you want that impact to be connected to your performance. And not
to you to you. You're the person, right? You want them to remember your personality. You see so often that these guys that are trying to find themselves, they go on stage, and you know that there's a conflict with their real character and who they're trying to present themselves to be, unless they're seasoned, like what's his who's that guy that plays the gay character, but he's not gay? Flamboyant. He's a comedy magic.
I know.
Anyway, so there's, so many different characters. But if you go out there and it's your character,
unclear about you,
and you're unclear about you, people are gonna get confused. And that's the hardest thing. For my challenge has been finding myself. That was the hardest part about the magic, not the tricks, because there's so many things you could practice and get good at, but finding out who you are and finding out what character you're going to portray on stage, I think is the hardest thing for anyone to achieve. And when you find that and you hit the sweet spot, that's it. Everything else just happens systematically on their own.
And like you said, like, you're sort of, as an audience member, you sort of depend on the magician to lead you, right. And with that, just like in social settings, you need a leader who is very stable in their character and their person and what they're saying and stuff like that. You don't want a leader who hems and haws. You don't want a leader who at first, is one kind of guy, but then all of a sudden he changes and then he's another kind of guy.
Right.
You want someone who's, very static with who they are and very, very like clear and, direct and a good leader.
And how do you get that?
Keep doing it, learning how to direct an audience.
No,
and
you just said it. That's it right there.
No, but I mean, like, by doing it over and over again,
That's
you
it.
see where you were able to direct an audience with your leading and where you lost them because you said something that you thought was clever under your breath maybe, but half the people heard it. And
it's called confidence. It's called practice. It's called doing it over and over again. Because you do it over and over again, you build the confidence. You're comfortable now. You're able to focus. You're able to deliver the way you would. The way we're having a conversation right now. We're here. We're comfortable. If you can have this kind of a conversation, if you can be like this in front of an audience of 1,000 people, guess what?
you hit it.
You hit it, right? And that just goes with practice.
And with, with scripting and all that, all that good
lots
stuff.
of work behind it, of course.
So you've been seems like you just beat this massive movement to mentalism, by whatever it was, 5 years or 10 years or something. You beat it. You got in before everyone seems to be running to go do mentalism right now.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on why that is?
I have no idea. I just think that there's good mentalists that are coming out there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people there's so many magicians, and so many magicians are doing all the same material. And I think when you see a good effect, good mentalism effect, something that's really, really powerful, and you see the reactions, I think people in our industry are starting to realize that this mentalism thing is an amazing piece under the umbrella of magic that hits an emotion that's a little bit different than, like we get this. At the end of my show, I always say, this is my favorite part because you guys are fully engaged right now, and there's a difference between magic and illusions and mentalism. Mentalism brings this one emotion, and it's called mystery. And right now, that's what you're experiencing, is because you don't know which way it's going. This is part of my pattern.
I remember it.
Right. Because you don't know which way it's going. And I even stop and say, I'm the guy that likes to look at license plates and read them and see if there's like a message for me. Do you guys ever do that? And it's right there where it's like, oh, yes, I do. Well, where is this going? I get you, but where are you taking me? That's mentalism. Magic, like I said, it displays. And when someone in our industry sees that connection with a mentalist and the audience, they want that. They're like, wow, that is so powerful. That is so powerful, and it's so profound that our craft is giving us the tool to connect with people, to get that, where people are like this, with their jaws dropped open, and they haven't even seen the effect yet.
And then they go home and they say, okay, four firemen are going to a burning building, and no one gives them the same response from that. Right. And then they say, let's go try some mentalism.
You just did an amazing card trick for someone, and then I looked at them and I told them the name that they were thinking in their head. Usually what happens is they say, that was a crazy card trick, but how did you know what I was thinking?
Of course.
You see that, guess what? That same guy with the deck of cards is going to go home and crack open a book on mentalism. That's, I think, what's happened, is that more mentalists started to perform, and Darren, did his thing, and you get all these mentalists that are doing amazing stuff. Magic now has become and also Blaine and all those guys, you see these guys, they're meshing it together, so you're getting all this, it's a mishmash of all mentalism, magic, and then you get guys that are doing a little bit of mentalism and they're realizing how powerful it is.
And then a little bit of magic as well to sort of like
yeah,
mix the like Aussie Wind.
Aussie Wind, same thing. And for me, it's like, I notice that I get more money doing a show on stage in front of hundreds of people. And taking out all those props with me is a pain in the ass.
Nightmare.
I go with one show and I rock it all the time. I've had so far, I've had a show. What is it? Thursday today. I've had a show every day this week.
Wow.
I got a show tonight. I got 2 shows tomorrow night, and I can easily go set up my show in 3 minutes and hit that stage. And I'm good. I'm good to go. Whereas if I was doing my illusion show, I'd have to be there early in the morning, and I'd still be setting up. And I'd have to change my clothes because I'd be sweating.
Have a team.
Yeah.
I'd have to have a team. I'd have to pay everybody. I'm going with me and one guy. Me and Ahmed are going to go set up in 20 minutes. And I'm done. And I'm going to create that same emotion, if not more, just with my show. And that, I think people are noticing. It's like, wow, I can do that. It's, I'm going to do that.
What is your advice for someone who wants to do that? Like, who wants to make the switch? Where is a good starting point?
Don't do it. Don't do it because I want to do it. I think the best thing to do is just, start with books.
As usual.
Get some material, and do close-up mentalism. Because there's nothing harder than doing close-up mentalism than doing stage mentalism. Close-up mentalism is not easy. It's not easy. It's because instead of doing a quick trick with something visual, floating a coin and doing a card trick, something in their pocket under their watch, blah blah blah. That's all great. But doing an effect that requires a little bit of pattern and getting them to connect with you and pay attention to you, it develops your skills, your interpersonal skills. You need to be interpersonal, and that's where I think my strength lies in, is that I was in sales for all my life, and I had a car dealership. I used to, that was my thing. So I had some skills.
You've been a people person forever.
I've been a people person. I'm the guy that'll go in there and be like, love those shoes, and you're handsome. Come give me a hug. I'm that guy, right?
Yeah.
So, and people can look at me and say, okay, you're actually not a weirdo. You're a normal person, and you seem like a nice guy. I'm gonna hang out with you.
I think it's
that presence.
Huge change that magic and mentalism and performance is going in right now, is wanting your audience to feel comfortable. It's like in the past, it was this like, you're gonna come see the most crazy thing,
dude,
like, hokey weird stuff,
weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's taken a shift to people being able to be comfortable and relate. Yeah.
And even like magic has this like, this settled down approach, unless you're at a kid's show now, it's more like, I don't want to say intellectual, but that's how a lot of them feel, I mean, at least the ones that aren't big illusion shows with clapping and music and
right.
The ones with a performer who's speaking to the audience, and it's very like, I don't want to say tame, but it's very cerebral,
Right.
And even magic shows, they're becoming very cerebral now, and I think it's partially based on what we touched on earlier, which is it's so hard to come up with a magic effect, a magic premise,
right.
It's so hard to relate cutting a woman in half and putting it back together. Like what? Like putting a lemon back together? Like that's kind of a thing I can relate to it. You can't really. You kind of just have to be like, I'm going to cut a woman in half and put it back together. Watch me do it, right? Versus something, mentalism or something more cerebral. How could he have known that I would have done that? With that sort of thing, it's very easy. In life, we always catch ourselves saying, how could he have known?
Mentalism asks, this is a very interesting thought that I shared. Mentalism makes the audience ask themselves the questions they've already asked themselves.
Right.
I mean, like, you've had that thought of, like, you're about to, can you pass me the, and then someone passes you the stapler, and they're like, how'd you know I wanted the whatever? Whereas magic is like, it makes them think about what they saw. It's like
my PK touches routine. I don't know if you've heard me, like, recently I talked about something that happened. Like, I was just sitting, I'm going to share something with you guys. I was just sitting on the chair with my wife, sitting on the sofa, and I'm thinking about a friend of mine, and my wife looks over at me and says, I wonder how Jeff is doing. And it's like, I was just thinking about him, and there's no pictures or nothing, and has that ever happened to you where you're thinking about someone and then someone else asks how they're doing? Or
of course, everyone goes, yes.
Or your phone rings and it's them. It's like, how is that? What is that? Is that a coincidence or is it something more?
And it's like a real emotion that you've leveraged,
It's real.
Now they're not coming at this thing going, okay, Magic Man, let me see you cut this woman in half. They're coming at this thing almost, you've laid the ground with the emotion, with the feeling.
It's no longer a game.
It's no longer, this is real stuff. Yeah. Real stuff that you can't even answer.
Yeah.
And you've experienced it. So let's bring it to life.
Let's do it right now.
Let's do it right now.
That helps you
on steroids.
Almost back in that science thing. It's like, let's do it right now under like what feels like test conditions. You know,
Right.
Now it's not. You're not just gonna go sit on the couch for the rest of your life hoping to have this experience where the phone rings and you're thinking of someone. Let's do it right now.
Right.
You get to watch all the tiny things that you want to see, and
So that's what you call engagement. That's what you call engaging your audience and keeping them connected with you. And that's the hardest thing to do for an entertainer, is to have your audience engaged. When someone books you and they see you on stage and they see the audience engage with you, that's it.
That's when they'll
and
book
the
you
reason
again.
why they'll book you again is because that's what you want. That's the ultimate.
They booked you for an hour and a half, and they want everyone zoned into you for an hour and a half.
And loving what they're seeing and relating. You know, you get good reviews when people can relate, right? So that's, I mean, if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And just like you said, I mean, like, even thinking about reviews, like, someone will say, like, wow, you know, he did this thing, and they might explain why it was cool, because it's grounded to them, which, for a magician, I mean, I think it would be just, I don't know how he did, if they were to write something. So the thing that I'm getting at is that it's more like, and I think that we've hit in this conversation, that it emotionally, you know, tags people, you know, like emotionally gives them this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's whereas in magic you have this, you know, like you said, a display. So what people have of the event is a memory of the display. You know, with mentalism, they have the memory, but also because you were able to say, this is what it's like, this is what it relates to, that feeling is there as well, you know? And it's like when you think about the dentist's office, you don't just think about the dentist's office, you think about all the feelings
and
that
stuff,
go with it.
Yeah.
With magic, I mean, those feelings are very limited, you know? It's just this feeling of, wow, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
Right. The thing that I'm gonna credit to magic, illusionist, and this entire picture, though, is the fact that at the end of it all, there is one thing that we all achieve. If we've done a nice effect, whether it be mentalism, magic, or anything, it's always followed by an awe moment where they're shocked, and then what happens right after that?
They process.
It's the slow process, puzzlement, and then arrival at this.
Yeah, but what happens right at the end?
Applause.
Laughter.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the amazement. It's the symbol for
And
amazement.
that's the part that I think that's the reason why I love this. That's that laughter
I find
part
that they're almost,
is what I got connected.
they're
that I
almost
got connected to.
laughing at the sort of beauty of,
Yes.
of the moment where they're just like, I can't, I don't even.
It's
you know,
such
you're
a good.
It's
laughter.
like when it's like laughing when you go to the beach at nothing funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just of the sheer like, look at what I'm sitting
That's
here
why
doing.
people
Exactly what
say
it
I
is.
love magic. So like yesterday I did a show, and a few people were like, oh, I love magic. You know, and the reason why they love magic is because they're, oh my God, I just experienced something that's unbelievable. Process, hands up, and they start laughing. It's that like I just had to release that. You know, it's like a tension that's off, and now they're not thinking about anything but something awesome, right? And that's the beauty of it. Ultimately, that's what I got addicted
And
to.
and I'm with you. To me, my like almost goal reaction is laughter, because it's this moment where all doors have been closed. There's not there. You know that if you've gotten to a smile and to laughter out of this thing, no, nothing was displayed. They didn't secretly see anything they weren't supposed to. They don't have any inkling. They bought both the emotion and the effect, and they got to this experience at the end where you did something that they at one point did not think was going to be possible. And that's why it's the same experience of, you know, going to an amazing beach for the first time, or seeing a mountain range, and just like, you know, laughing at the awe. And I think that's a good, even if it's not an actual thing that happens every time, it's a good mental goal to try to, like, that's the response you want, that release.
It's funny that you bring this up, because 2 weeks ago I was doing a project with a company called Click Health, and there was a neuroscientist there and myself, and I was teaching a trick on camera, and they were going to send this footage to 60 of their staff, and half of them were going to learn it in increments, and the other half were going to learn it in whole.
Altogether. And
they were going to test to see who did it better, who learned. It was just a learning thing. And the neuroscientist touched on the psychology part of it, and we predicted who was going to do better. They broke them into a few different groups and whatnot. But the neuroscientist and I, we had a discussion, and we touched on this, the whole laughter part, because we talked about what happens, the emotions in magic, and when it's displayed, how the audience reacts. And she said that there's 2 different types of reactions when it comes to laughter. One of them is like a comedic relief, and the other one is something a lot deeper. And this is what we're talking about right now, right? So and she said to me, she goes, because if something amazing happens or something crazy happens,
no other response.
As long as no one gets hurt, it's always a laughter. Like if someone falls off a chair in the most ridiculous fashion, or someone's pants gets ripped off, or if you do a bungee jump and the bungee doesn't break, or just something amazing happens.
Yeah, there's nothing really funny about any of those things.
Right, nothing funny about those things. You can even take it to, like, if you want to be like crazy, what if I take a chicken's head, I rip it off? That's bad. No one's going to laugh after that.
No.
But what if I put it back on and the chicken's fine and runs around?
They're all going to laugh.
They're going to laugh.
You just saw something horrible that didn't hurt anybody and ended up being super amazing, out of the ordinary. You're going to laugh your head off. Right? So,
I can only imagine an example of like something happening in the moment. So if like a glass fell off the table and then Tyler quickly grabbed it, we would all laugh at that experience,
right.
And it's not
Same
funny.
Emotion, yeah.
It's not funny, but it's this like, wow, that we all experienced together.
Everything's okay.
Exactly. Everything's good, and we got there together.
That was amazing. No one got hurt. Right?
It's the release. It's a
good release.
It's a good release. Yeah. So we're nearing the end, and one of the things that we like to do when we get to the end is just sort of go around and talk about things that either we learned or were sort of, revealed or brought to the surface in this conversation, like
final points,
major points for people to remember, and then you'll plug anything that you want to plug.
Sure.
So for me, I mean, that I'm really excited that other people feel the same way I feel about laughter. Really, because my responses so far from magicians has been, they've been telling me to be less directed in my goal for the audience's response, because everyone's different, which is, I think, a good thing to keep in mind. But I also think it's good to really plan that journey and plan the emotion exactly that that laughter and that big release. And I like the way that you were describing it, almost in terms of audience energy, how it builds and how it goes away, and the stuff about belief and ethics and all that stuff. As long as you have that energy and you have, they don't know how it works and all that stuff, then, and you're practiced in your show and you know how to perform, then you're on the right path towards that laughter, and you're on the right path towards that unforgettable experience that is this amazing release of positivity. So for me, I'm happy to know that other people sort of have that in their mind, and I really like it, and I'm moving forward. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very much sort of in the same light, where I was like, that really opened my mind in terms of like not caring about specifically what my audience is thinking, but just some like making sure that they are thinking. And one of the other things that really sort of resonated with me and sort of got me thinking was the sort of the idea of connecting real life experiences to false experiences that you're going to create on stage. And not only is that powerful because you're connecting it to their lives and letting them connect it to their own lives, but you're connecting it to your life for yourself. So the tension that you're going to be displaying on stage still comes from a real place. Like, you're going on the journey and just taking them with you. Whereas before, I was always trying to just sort of push them along a path instead of pull them behind me, which I think is a very interesting sort of approach that I'm going to think about.
Do you have final thoughts about...
Outside the box, I'm going to say right away that this 14 years has been one hell of a ride, and just having you guys here reconfirms that I'm so lucky to be doing what I love. And that's it. For me, as finding my hobby and my passion and pursuing it and doing my best in it and being driven by everything that we're talking about as opposed to anything else. and letting my ego collapse and not thinking about my ego too much, but more so about the craft itself. That's been, this conversation reconfirms that was the most important thing for me, because I had a really hard time with ego, and being able to let go of that and focus on the craft in itself. Everything that you just talked about in your closing, I think relates really heavily to the fact that if you want to be really good at this, let go of the ego part of it, because the ego part of it will shatter any chance of you being able to move forward. So blessing for me to be able to do this with you guys.
And thank you so much. Do you have any
anything
projects to plug? Anywhere people can find you online?
Anything happening in 2.5 months that you're eager to shout about? Do you have a website?
Does this get
Twitter?
Is this all over everywhere?
Yeah, it'll be everywhere.
Everywhere. So I guess I'll expose the fact that we have a company called Trick Theater, and I've been doing the shows out of Dave & Buster's, and we just basically got a contract with Dave & Buster's to open up all the shops across the U.S. and give residency to magicians. And the contract that we're giving is like 11 months out of the year.
Wow.
And we have like a contract for the initial guy that's going to be performing and a couple of their backups. And this contract is a really hefty contract. So we're doing auditions. We're going around and looking for people. And I know the who in the business. So like we just next weekend I'm in North Carolina. The weekend after that we're doing Baltimore. We have Rick Smith Jr. in Ohio. We have Joshua Lozoff, Mike Casey. That's going to be doing North Carolina. We also have Pittsburgh. We have Lee Trebozic right now in Pittsburgh. So
go check out a Dave & Buster's.
No,
right?
don't do that.
Oh, no.
Just give me
Never
a call.
mind.
If you're interested and you're really good and you've been doing this for a while and you're a pro and you want residency, shoot me an email at shows@bobbymotta.com and we can talk. And if you're in Toronto, I have a show every Friday and Saturday night that I do. And that's it.
And it's awesome. And we've been there a couple times.
I do an 8 o'clock show and a 10 o'clock show, and that runs all year long. So come and check it out.
Awesome. Anywhere people can find you online or?
Yeah, just bobbymotta.com. BOBBYMOTTA.com.
Perfect. Bobby, thank you guys so much, and we will see all of you on the next episode of Discourse in Magic.
Take care.
Peace.
Well, there you have it, episode 20 of Discourse in Magic. I hope that you learned something about mentalism and about, our expectations for our audience and, how to handle the fact that maybe some people don't believe what you're doing and other people might, and how to dive into mentalism if that's something that you're interested in doing. And of course, tons of tips on how to make your performance better. So I hope you got something out of that. I'll give you a quick reminder about the contest going on until the end of August. It's very easy. Send us a tweet to @MagicDiscourse telling us either what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, and that's it. You'll be entered to win a copy of Blackmail by Peter McKinnon and Bobby Motta. And it's an incredible tool, and it will help us greatly to know what sort of things you like and what sort of things you don't like. So if you're listening to this and it's not already September or any month later than that, then please dive in, send us a quick tweet. We know they're short, that's how Twitter works, and you'll be entered to win a copy of Blackmail. Thank you so much, and we will see you all on the very exciting episode 21 of Discourse in Magic.